This movie is about dates and times. We're going to discover that dates and times are actually values. They're numbers that are just formatted to look like they're dates. We'll talk about the serial number assignment for dates and take a look at the acceptable ways to enter dates and times in Excel. Let me begin by explaining that dates are actually values. They're numbers. They're numbers that are formatted to look like they're dates, but the content of the cell is actually a number. These numbers are a serial number assignment that begin with the number 1 being equal to January 1st, 1900, number 2 is equal to January 2nd, 1900, and so on. What this means is, for Excel, dates don't exist prior to January 1, 1900. Generally, that's not a problem. I've never run into that being an issue for anything I've ever done in Excel. There is yet one more peculiarity with Excel's date system, and that is that Excel recognizes February 29th, 1900 as a valid date, and in fact it wasn't. So we're going to take a look at dates. As I said, dates are serial number assignments that convert the content, a value, into a format of a date. We have cells C10 to 12 selected. I'm going to format these cells into a date. Right now their values are numbers, number 1, 2, 3. I'm going to right click, choose Format Cells. Now we haven't talked about formatting cells yet, but it helps to explain what's going on with dates if I start with the numbers, which is what the content is, and then just reformat those numbers as a date, and you can see it converts to what looks to be a date, and actually, like I said, the content is a number. So I'm going to select date, and I'll select this style, say OK, and we have a conversion from 1, 2, 3 to the dates, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1900. I'm going to left click and just make C10 the active cell. In the cell, we have a 2-digit display of the year. In the formula bar, it actually has a 4-digit display, 1900. Now that I have the cell formatted as a date, I can enter a number in here, and Excel will display that as a date. I'll enter 5000, Control Enter, and I know that September 8th, 2013 is actually the 5000th day after January 1st, 1900. Times are similar to dates in that they are numbers as well. For times, a number that's between 0 and 1 can be formatted to be displayed as a time. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right-click that range that I've selected, left-click Format Cells, left-click Time, and choose this style, OK. And 0.25 is 6 a.m., 0.5 is 12 p.m. That's half of a day, and 3/4 of a day is 6 o'clock at night. So the fractional portion of a day is expressed first as a number in terms of time, where 0.5 is half of a day, 0.25 is 1/4 of a day. And when you convert those numbers between 0 and 1 and display them, you get the time displayed in terms of how much time has elapsed within that day, whether it's 0.25, 1/4 of the day, half the day, or 3/4 of the day in this case. So going to the next logical step, we have numbers here, 1.25, 1.5, 1.75. Based on what we already know, when I convert these to be formatted as a date and time, we should see 1.25 displayed as January 1st, 6 o'clock a.m. Left-clicking, Format Cells, Date, sliding down to find a date and time, OK, January 1st, 1900, 6 a.m. We see that in the formula bar as well. 1.5 is January 1st, 12 noon. 1.75 is January 1st, 6 o'clock at night. Now, in order to have Excel display a number as a date, it isn't a requirement that you reformat the numbers into a date format. You can have Excel automatically do that depending upon the way you enter the content in the first place. In column C, we have a number of acceptable ways to enter a date. Since we know dates are values, they're numbers, they're going to be right justified, just as all the cells in C10, 11, 12, D10, 11, 12, E10, 11, 12 are all right justified. We know those are values, they're numbers. We formatted them as dates. They're right justified, every single one of them. In column C, under the heading Dates, we see that the content of all of those cells are left justified. That's because those are not dates. They are text strings, but they are a representation of how to enter information into Excel where it accepts it as a date and formats it accordingly. So I'm going to left click here and enter just what we see in cell C17, 12/25/12. Enter. Looking into the formula bar, I see 12/25/2012. The default display in the formula bar has a 4-digit year. In D17, it's only a 2-digit year. How did Excel know that 12, I only entered 12, was 2012 and not 1912 or 1812? Well, there is yet another default at work whereby when you're entering dates and you enter a 2-digit year, if those 2 digits are 29 or less, Excel assumes that you want a date in the 21st century. If it's 30 or greater, Excel assumes that you want a date in the 20th century. I'll re-enter this date, 12/25, and enter 29, Control Enter. Excel assumes it's the 21st century, 2029. If I enter 12/25/30, Control Enter, Excel assumes it's 1930, and that will be true for any number greater than 30. So the rest of these text strings in column C represent valid ways to enter a date. The text strings in column E, and again we know they're text because it's left justified, represent valid ways to enter times. I'll left click and make F17 the active cell, enter 7 space AM, Control Enter. I see in the formula bar and in column F that in fact is 7 a.m. The formula bar shows 700 for minutes and 00 for seconds, so it'll actually carry seconds in the time. Left clicking on C26, making C26 the active cell, I'm going to enter just what it shows in the text string to the left, space AM, and now we have 7:30 and 25 seconds AM. You can also enter time as military time, 19:30, 25, 7:30 and 25 seconds AM. And as I said before, you can right click and get this format to display the time in any one of a number of different ways. So I've changed from the military time into the standard time display. So that's an introduction to dates and times. Dates are numbers. They're serial numbers that have an association with dates beginning January 1st, 1900. Since they're numbers, you can actually perform mathematical calculations on them and get, for instance, the difference between a more current date and an older date. We'll get into that in subsequent movies. There's a lot of functions that are associated with dates. We'll also get into all of that. Dates are whole numbers beginning with 1, January 1st, 1900, and counting sequentially from that point on through current and beyond. Times are fractional parts of a day that are expressed with a number that's between 0 and 1, and you can express a date and time by converging both of those concepts. And as we saw, there's a number of different ways to acceptably enter dates and times so that you don't have to manually reformat Excel to express your numbers in terms of a date or time.